Welcome to another episode of On the Patio. I'm Dean, and tonight we have the privilege coming from the southern part of California, Mr. Josh Hayes. Josh, welcome to On the Patio.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
No, it's great to have you. For all of you two-wheel aficionados out there that have been following motorcycle, GP, AMA Superbike, anything that had two wheels, Josh has been in the game for many decades uh, on many
Ouch.
flavors of bikes. Well, he's not that old. He recently just had a birthday in April, and happy birthday again. Um,
Thanks.
but no, we were just having a conversation here a few minutes ago before I hit the old record button about Josh's career and what got him started on a bike at a young age, and how he traded up and did some schlepping and some wagering on and getting to where he's at today with racing and doing some tutoring and mentoring and teaching and coaching. So the conversation that I wanted to let Josh take over with is a little bit of a story on how his dad got him on a bike and what he did to get where he went on turning pro and the races that he's accomplished. I'll turn it
And
over to you for a second.
we could talk for a long time on this, but
This might be a while, but no, I'll let
my
you do a short capsule, Josh.
my dad loved motorcycles. He always did. I have a awesome picture of my dad, very young, probably 20 years old, with my mother. My mother had long, straight red hair. My dad looked like Slash with curly, black, long hair, tight jeans, like, button-up shirt, real short, sleeves, cigarette in his mouth. But, you know, um, he loved motorcycles and he brought that love to me, though we didn't really have them around the house a lot as a kid. I rode a Z50, a little mini bike. As a fireman, he did what the fireman did. He went through the different toys and phases that they went through. He raced go-karts for a little while, raced motocross a little bit. He had a street bike for a little while, and I remember having a love for that street bike. His younger brother, my uncle, also rode sport bikes, and he was a lot younger than my dad and the cool kid in the family that lived at home with mom and could afford to have a motorcycle and a car. So he was kind of my hero too. So when I was 11, my dad schlepped a $100 mini bike, DS80 dirt bike out of somebody's backyard for $100, and him and the fireman worked on it, put it together. They were pretty mechanically inclined, got it going, and I was allowed to ride it in a field next to my house. And I rode that until I was 15 and could get a car and go do something else. And
Right.
you know, because in South Mississippi, 15 years old, you got your driver's license.
Sure.
Wheeled and dealed a few things. Got my first street bike as a senior in high school. My best friend in high school had gotten a GSXR 750 about 2 weeks prior. So we were our own motorcycle gang in South Mississippi, hung out with all the military guys at Keesler Air Force Base that had motorcycles in their early 20s. And eventually figured out that there was such a thing as racing and went and did Ware Club Racing in the South. And it just, every year I did enough that it was able to grow and get a little bit better. Eventually, John Ulrich, a long time uh, family, the Ulrich family in our industry, Road Race World Magazine, and his team, Team Hammer, picked me up and did a couple of years in the trenches with him before I moved into the big team and moved up to pro racing at the same time in 1999. And again, I had a fantastic season, and it was just a slow road up from there. So I never really took anything by storm. I was a bit of a more steady student that had to trudge my way along and learn the things a bit the hard way. But I did manage to get there through a lot of perseverance and to end my career, 19 years in pro racing, 7 national championships, and numerous times in the top three, second on the all-time win list in most categories, and a lot of records in others. I'm a lucky man who's gotten to live an exceptional life. I've got a amazing wife who road races motorcycles also in national championships as well as world endurance championship. And now we got a 2-year-old that I'm sure is going to be a terror. And hopefully he rides motorcycles his whole life. But if it's up to me, he'll be a golfer or a tennis player.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, you're sharing some stories and some photos of him, and he definitely has a lot of your characteristics and your wife's in his ability and aptitude for motorized vehicles already. So
His mother. I'm gonna blame his mother because he's got Striders, which are the little balance bikes, and now there's the Stasic, which is basically a Strider with an electric motor. He
right,
also has an Osset, which is an electric trials bike, an actual true motorcycle. And then, of course, the day Danny Walker at American Super Camp found out that Melissa was pregnant, a TTR 50 showed up here with graphics on it for him and everything. So we've got that downstairs, and yeah, he's a spoiled brat. He's not going to have any idea how hard it is to make it motorcycle
not
racing.
at this pace, not with the loyalty of parents that he has with all the goodies waiting for him. That's for sure. That's a great story. No, we talked briefly about how you cut your teeth very humbly, and I remember without going to a lot of my backstory, being around the track and the paddock and being on a different flavor of a bike back in the days. But you were always very humble and very generous with your kindness, and that's the one reason why I wanted to reach out and have you on, because a lot of people don't understand the physical demands of being a professional motorcycle racer, a rider, an athlete, what that does to your body and the disciplines that you go through, but the emotional and the mental preparation and the ego. You do have to have a bit of an ego for that competitive edge. And that ego for you, without me patting you on the back, always stayed on the track. You had that competitive edge, that ego on the track. But once you got off the bike and the helmet came off, that person stayed on the track. And I'll never forget that.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know that I can take credit for it, that I was consciously aware of it or doing that. I got to blame my father, who had a lot of say in my demeanor and how I interacted with people and respect and different things like that. And one of the things I did know is that we had to have a lot of respect for one another, because we're still, as motorcycle racers, we're a pretty small traveling circus with
Sure.
a very common passion. And I did understand that if you didn't have good competition, you didn't really accomplish a whole lot. So it was in my best interest that everyone around me perform well, because I wanted to beat people at their very best. That was the only way I truly felt like I was accomplishing my goals. And so it starts with kindness, I think. And we were all there for a common love of the same thing, first and foremost. And where I can understand, I've raced against competitors who had to be the other way. They needed to dislike you to race you well. um, I was of a different feeling. I could love you like a brother, and I was still going to belt you off the track if it
Right.
got me to the checkered flag first, and I will race you to the very best of my abilities, but I'll never do anything that I think will hurt you, because I care about people.
Well, that shows, and that's the one reason why I wanted to reach out to you to do this. And I'm very grateful for you taking the time, even through this very chaotic time of the world. You made time to do this this evening and spend some time with us and tell us just a minute or two about who you are as a man, a father, a husband, a son. All those. Oh, and wait, and now you get to be a motorcycle racer when you have a
Yeah, for so many years of my life, I was a motorcycle racer, and then, you know, in the last 15 or so, I was a husband from time to time, and now I'm a lot of other things. So, now I'm a guy who was a former racer, and who coaches some pretty fast guys these days. Um, who works really hard to try to be a good and understanding husband to a wife that likes to go racing and go off and do her own thing also. And the scariest thing of all, to try to be a father and figure out in an ever changing world how to keep your kid, through the experiences I've learned working with younger guys and racing and stuff like that, to keep my kid on the right track of being the type of, I don't want to say lead the life I want him to live, but be the type of human being that I want him to grow up to be. So first and foremost, it's just trying to have a lot of fun, but teaching him how to respect people and things, and hopefully teach him the value of personal relationships, and because those are going to be the things that are going to carry you really far in life. The racing, even now, only being out of it for 3 years as a full-time racer, I can look back and see is that my life's not over yet, and I still have a long way to go. So the racing, actually, as much as it consumed me, it consumes only a portion of your life, and we got to figure out how to get through the rest of it. And it's going to be really hard to do if you're doing it alone. And that's the thing I'm afraid of for a lot of people right now, with the way social interaction is happening through social media and the internet, rather than true personal relationships and face-to-face talking.
No, it's a good point. The technology insulates and isolates us just as much as it can bring us together. Like this evening, we're doing this by Skype. Obviously, it'd be nice to do it face to face, but for many reasons, we're doing it electronically. And the legacy that you speak about handing down to your son, that team, that paddock, that crew chief, is important whether you're on the track or off the track.
Well, I was pretty lucky because now that I'm working with young guys and trying to pass along some of the things that I've learned, one of those things that I notice and recognize is, as I see how they interact with the crews and the people around them, good or bad, I've managed to somehow take a leadership role in some way, but establish a relationship with a crew chief who had my life in their hands and make them family to me.
Sure.
And we were all very, very close, and it was in my best interest, I felt like, to do that, because I felt like, as a friend, we go to bat for our friends, and I needed somebody who cared about me putting my brake pads in.
Right.
That was a big deal. And when I see how people, some of these younger riders interact with the people who are actually the guys who are in control of the motorcycle when it's not in their hands, I go, man, you need to think about how you handle this. And that could be from a business perspective of, hey, these people who are spending their own money to support racing and be here and sponsor you, if they're not having fun, they're not going to come back. So your little problem is your little problem, and you still need to make at least feel like we as a team have a problem, and how do we move forward.
Right.
And I was fortunate, because that may be what I look back at as one of my biggest strengths in racing, way beyond what I was able to do with the handlebars.
Right.
And I was able to build and establish teams. When I first came to the Yamaha team, the crew chief I was given, I thought, man, this guy's good at this, this, and this, but I don't know if he's the right guy to get me where I need to be. And I didn't see the value of him until a little bit later, when we went through a hard time and worked our way back out, because I had only worked with other types of crew chiefs and chief mechanics. But he was a fantastic manager with the resources underneath him to get the job done. And his ability to organize ended up being the key to our success in building a good routine that helped us go first or second for 8 straight seasons in the most competitive superbike class that there is. So uh, you know, learning those relationships and how to manage those situations and things is really important. And I don't see quite so many people with some of those values that can manage that well. And my thing I always remembered thinking was, every difficult situation I managed to get myself in all those years, my mantra of how I dealt with it was, how can I get out of this situation in a way that would make my father proud of me? And if I can do that, I can't get it wrong. No matter what, right or wrong, I'm going to be okay.
Right.
That I tried to do this the right way, and it served me well so far.
And it's continuing as you pass it down to your son, and
I hope so.
you're coaching and mentoring. Even still, you've got your hand in racing, whether you're racing a few times during the year, but you're still in the thick of it. And
The old dog still got a few tricks up his sleeve.
Yes, yes. I know that it's late. I'm very grateful that you could join us tonight. Before we say goodnight, could you share with us just a little bit about what's coming around the corner for you when the fog lifts and we're able to actually go back to some sort of regular schedule of what's happening in your forecast with being on the track, and how can people find you either on social media or otherwise, and keep an eye on you?
Well, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Josh Hayes on Facebook. I think I'm Josh Hayes 4 on Instagram. Not real sure. um, and I'm doing some one-on-one coaching. I'm also doing some camps. I've done a few camps, and we ended up calling it J Force Training Camp. So it's J the number 4 ORCE J Force Training Camp. I have a website where you can sign up for like track days and some one-on-one coaching here in California. I am working primarily with a few pro riders. So I've got Jake Gagne on the factory, on the Attack Yamaha Racing. And then I've got Bobby Fong, who's our 600 Super Sport Championship champion from last year, who's moved up to Superbike next to Tony Elias this year. So I've got those two guys that I'll still be coaching at Moto America races as we find out what kind of schedule we're going to have. Right. And the last bit of riding I may do is they've moved the Daytona 200. Which I was on provisional poll for before they pulled the plug on it. They've moved it to October, and there is still a chance that we can manage to make that happen. And with the wife as my crew chief, we may still go back out to Daytona and try to finish this thing up.
Yeah, you were right at the cusp of being on top of that mountain. I mean, at the last minute, obviously, for obvious reasons, it got postponed, and I hope that that new date does come to fruition, bearing that everyone's safe and healthy for it.
All right.
Yeah. Well, Josh, it was a pleasure to see and speak to you again. It's been a number of years. I'm glad to see you doing so well, and you're in a great place, as you've always been, but now that you have a 2-year-old and living a different chapter of your racing career, it's nice to see the same Josh Hayes, humble and grateful as you've always been towards me and everyone else in the industry.
I appreciate that. And, if you think up some more questions, we can do this again sometime, or even if you get some any feedback that people that have some questions, I'll answer questions for you.
Absolutely. Maybe we could do a Q&A on the next round.
There we go.
You bet. Everybody, Mr. Josh Hayes coming in live via Skype from the San Diego area tonight. Please look him up on Facebook and Instagram. We'll have some tags coming around the corner for you when you stay tuned to the post of this show. And Josh, thanks for being on the patio, everyone. Have a good night, and please be safe out there. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, man.
That's a wrap.